Houndsman XP brings you a Houndsman profile this week. We have Mr. Alan Bridges from Athens, Georgia on the podcast this week. I'm happy to be able to bring this conversation between Alan and I to the podcast. Alan is also a leader among houndsmen in the state of Georgia. You'll hear about his involvement in his coon hunting organization down there. We talk about his family farm, and they make a living off this farm growing beef. So this is going to be a great podcast for us. It gets to know a fellow houndsman who is out there making a difference in his local area and across the United States. You can find him on social media. He's on Facebook. He is the admin for the Facebook group Coon Hunting Conversations, and not a hard guy to find. He's more than happy to talk to you, and he's always working hard for you, the houndsman. I also want to give a big shout out to our Patreon supporters, the people that keep the lights on for this show. If you haven't joined us on Patreon, you can do so. And what does that mean? What does it mean to support us on Patreon? By becoming a patron for Houndsman XP, you can do that for as little as $1 a week. And with that $1 that you're investing, we are going to pay you back with discount codes from several manufacturers, several vendors who sponsor this show, who have agreed to give you discounts for supporting this podcast. We also conduct monthly drawings for our patron supporters. We put a prize package together. We put all the names in the hat, and we draw it out. Last month, we gave away a Ging 4 packet charge, $199 value. We've got our semi-annual and our annual drawings coming up. We've got a lot of great prizes lined up for that. I don't even know what that annual is going to be, the total value on that. It's going to be well over $500. So it's like one of our patrons just told me not too long ago. He can't believe that we give away the packages we do for the price that he pays. He said, according to his stats, he has a good chance of making money on this deal. So join us on Patreon. Go to our website at houndsmanxp.com, click on the support tab, and you can start joining other houndsmen who support this podcast. And you can do that for as little as $1 per week. Guys, it's time to get down to this episode. Mr. Alan Bridges joins us. We got a couple of hounds loaded up in this Old South dog box. We're going to dump the box. In this episode of the Houndsman XP podcast, we have Mr. Alan Bridges from Athens, Georgia. And Alan, I am really happy that you decided to come on the Houndsman XP podcast. How are you today?
I'm great, Chris. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to do this thing with you.
Do you have any idea why I would reach out to you and ask you to be on the Houndsman XP podcast?
Well, I've got a big mouth. I try to stay involved with the issues that are going on today. And you and I have had some conversations in the past, and we kind of see things eye to eye.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And we're not just trying to talk in an echo chamber here, but you know, that's exactly right, Alan. But you're also a pretty accomplished houndsman, and we'll get to that in a second. But I like talking to people and that kind of live outside themselves, look at the bigger picture, you know, think about some of the current issues, aren't afraid to get involved, and help other houndsmen across the United States and across the world on how we can keep turning these hounds loose and having the lifestyle that we have and different things like that. But before we get to all that, you know, Alan, you also tell us where you're at, where you're from, what you do for a living, and then we'll get into some of those hounds.
All right. Well, my name is Alan Bridges, and you were partly right about where I live. I'm in a little town called Lexington. Actually, I live right outside of Lexington in a little community called Salem, and it's about 20 miles east of Athens, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And go Dogs.
You bleed bulldog.
But, yes, sir. And so my family has been in the registered Angus feed stock business since 1944. And before that, my great-grandfather farmed the same land. So I'm fourth-generation farmer. I live about 0.3 of a mile from where I grew up. So my family's been here in this county, actually, Oglethorpe County in northeast Georgia, since the 1770s. My grandfather, 2 or 3, 4 times removed, he was in the Continental Army, but he came from Virginia, moved to North Carolina, and settled in Oglethorpe County back in the 1700s.
Amazing.
And we just didn't go very far.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's an amazing story. We could do a podcast just on that, Alan, because I'm like this huge. I spent a lot of my years studying Revolutionary War, and colonial America, and anytime I talk to somebody that's roots are that deep, then it just I can't stop talking about it, really. But we can't spend all day doing that. My family's actually 1750s documented landing in Virginia. So yeah, my family goes way back in this country too, and I think that's kind of one of those things. I didn't know that before today, but that's probably why I was attracted to the idea of talking to you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But so we are in the business of producing protein for people to consume. We try to produce high quality Angus beef. We have a freezer beef business where we sell directly to a consumer, and we cut out all the middle people.
Yeah.
And then we also sell genetics to commercial breeders and other seed stock producers all across America. And we've even got some Bridges genetics running around in Russia and Mexico and Canada.
And those genetics come out of your generational Angus beef.
Yes. Just, when we produce bulls, they go, my granddad was the founder of Bridges Angus Farm, and he served as the president of the Georgia Cattlemen's Association, the Georgia Angus Association. He was also the president of the American Angus Association, which is the largest beef breed organization in the world.
So you got a little bit of history in farming, then, is what you're saying?
Yes, sir. We have a little bit.
Yeah.
But yep.
I'm gonna break all the rules and all the etiquette, and you can answer this or you can not answer this. But so, how many acres are you farming, and how many head of cattle are you running, breeding cow calves and bulls?
Well, we own about between 500 and 600 acres of land. We add to it as often as we can if property close to us comes up for sale, and if we're able to, afford it. Land prices fluctuate, and right now is a seller's market, and so it's
you bet
tough. It's tough to be a buyer right now, but so we have about 500 acres, and it's mostly in pasture. There's some woods here. It would be, if you were to come hunting with me, you would kind of scratch your head and go, this is kind of like hunting in Indiana.
Yeah.
But, but we'd mostly be hunting the edge of cow pastures. But I'm also not too far away from a lot of public land. So there's hundreds of thousands of acres not far within an hour's drive of me.
Yeah.
So, but we farm about 500 acres. The cow herd, it's tricky. I've got a friend of ours in eastern North Carolina that he bought 120 heifers from me, not all at one time, but over the total amount was about 120 head. And I buy all his calves back. We make all of his genetic decisions, and we buy all those calves back. And that solves a lot of problems for us. I don't have to have the extra land. I don't have to have the extra iron in terms of equipment, and I don't have to have a lot of the extra labor that it would take to take care of these. My brother and I do it all by ourselves. We have 10 poultry houses, so we're contract poultry growers too. And so having all that, it didn't leave a lot of time for me to go turkey hunting or duck hunting or even deer hunting. When it got dark, we didn't do a whole lot of work, so that left time to go coon hunting.
There you go.
So my granddad did it when he was young, and I always heard the stories. My dad didn't, and it just, it evolved from when I was a young teenager to where I am today, 45. That's the kind of hunting I chose to do because that's when I had time to hunt.
Yeah. Work first, hunting after that. And tell us about those hounds. Tell us what you have built down there in Georgia, because your name pops up quite a bit on social media and in different hunt records and things like that. So hunt standings. Tell us what line of dog you're hunting, what breed of dog you're hunting, and where you've gone with those.
Well, I've owned everything, every recognized registered breed of hound except for a leopard, and those weren't recognized by UKC when I started hunting.
Right.
But in 1995, I started with the first really good dog I had was a blue tick, an American blue tick, and so I fooled with American blue ticks for about 10 years, and I really liked them. I had some really good ones, and I never could quite understand. I'd never fooled with a whole lot of. I had a specific bloodline in the blue tick breed that I really liked.
What'd you like?
And I didn't stray. Well, I doubt it would be really popular today because it would be super hard to find. But everything that I had went back to a particular dog called Grand Night Champion Bell Creek Blue Buck.
Okay.
And that dog was a son of Hammer 5. And so that dog crossed particularly well with a lot of the Houndsman stock back in the day.
Okay.
And so we that was the bloodline we had. They were fast, they were hard hunting, they were intelligent, they were loud, and they were accurate, and they were real good tree dogs.
Mm-hmm.
But I bred those things, and being a guy in his teens and early 20s, I wasn't smart enough to keep any of that back. I sold everything I made. And when my brother and I bought our family farm in 2005, all of a sudden I was so busy and so concentrated on what I was doing at work that when I came home, I was obliterated. I was tired. All I did was want to sit down, eat supper, take a shower, sit down, probably fall asleep in the chair. My wife wake me up and honey, go bed. And so I didn't hunt for about 5 years.
Okay.
My dogs got old and they died off. And when I started back, got the urge, the itch again to start back, I called some of the people that I had sold dogs to, and they were like, "Who are you?"
Yeah, buddy.
So I called the guy that I started with. Steve Fussell's his name. and he's in South Georgia, and he hooked me back up with another blue tick. And being in the Angus business, I was on my way to pick her up, the blue tick puppy, and I stopped at a cow sale, an Angus cow sale, on the way down, and visited with some friends. And a buddy of mine happened to be there, and he said, "What are you doing down here in this little town in South Georgia at this cow sale?" I said, "Well, I've known these guys for years and years, and they've been real good friends as a family. And actually, I'm on my way to Douglas, Georgia to pick up a coon dog." And he said, "You coon hunt?" And I was like, "Yeah, I coon hunt." And he says, "Man, I've got a really nice English female. If you need something to train a puppy with, give me a call." Okay. So I went and picked the puppy up, brought her home. Several months went by, and I called him and about the English female, and he brought her to me, and we hunted her, and I really liked her, and so I was going to use her to help train my blue tick puppy. Well, it turns out the blue tick didn't want to go with the old dog. It always wanted to go out and do its own thing, which that was fine with me.
Right.
And I've got my own particular training methods that I've learned over the years. And, I was disciplining the blue tick one night for treeing some off game. I don't like to get rough with them. I don't yell at them. But she got really upset with me, and she never treed for me again.
No kidding. Just dropped the ball.
No kidding. She said, "I'm done."
Forget you.
And so I gave her to a guy a couple of years later, and she hadn't been hunted in like 2 years, and I gave her to a guy, and he treated like 40 coons with her that summer.
I'm telling you, I can relate to that. Sometimes dogs just need a new zip code. They just need a new address, new zip code. Something just doesn't mesh between the two of you. I've seen that so many times in hounds, Alan, over the years. Either I'm getting them from
fast, loud, beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
I'm either getting them from somebody else, or I've got a dog here that me and you just aren't clicking, and I'll send them down the road to somebody that I know that is a good dog man, and they can make something out of that dog. Seen it before.
Mm-hmm. Well, the English female, she rocked on. She did everything better, faster, and more stylish. I mean, I liked everything about her. And her name was Patches. I still have her. She's 14.
Okay.
She's what turned me on to English dogs. And my desire to build all-night English kennels came from having her and wanting to continue her line.
And how's she bred, Alan? What'd she go back to?
Well, on the top, she goes, she's a double-bred Campbell's Bluegrass Amos. That's not a bloodline you see a lot anymore.
Yeah, but it's a good one.
And that's true. And if you go back and look on her fourth generation of her pedigree, I mean, it's like every single dog would be considered a Hall of Fame type dog. Evans Red Joe, Merck Singing Pap.
Yep.
Swamp Rooster's in there. Bluegrass Amos is in there. Timber Star Buck. I mean, all those old famous English hounds were in her pedigree.
Yeah.
Well, along about that time, another friend that I'd known forever, he had gotten hold of some English dogs that he really liked, and they produced a dog that I wound up buying before he turned 2, and his name was Freaky Fast Jimmy John. We call him JJ. and a friend of mine gave him that name. I didn't name him. I don't take any credit for that. I'm not that creative. But anyway,
neither was he. He was just a copycat.
Well, hey, I'll be honest with you. He was struggling trying to come up with a name for the dog, the guy I bought him from. And he was watching a NASCAR race, and Kevin Harvick won, and Jimmy Johns was his sponsor, and we called the dog JJ. And he was standing there talking on TV, and he had a big JJ hat on.
Yeah.
So that's how the dog got his name. And so I bought JJ, and I bred JJ to Patches, and it's kind of where I started. But all of my dogs, with the exception of Patches, go back to a dog that was named Hammond's McNutt Creek Bullet. And he sired 60-something puppies. And his percentage would be considered really high for the dogs that were titled out of him. He's got 8 or 9 dogs that are titled. He was never bred to any kind of outstanding females. There were some pretty good dogs in there. I never got to hunt with Bullet, but he was gone before I got involved with these dogs. But JJ's double bred on the old Bullet dog, and then I've added to them my dogs, but mainly the dogs that I have, I've bred up.
Yeah.
And I added a son of Bullet. He's a Grand Night dog called Timber Cutters Major. And then I bought another female that would have been out of Major's littermate sister, and I named her sire. Actually, I think he came up from somewhere in the Midwest. A dog. He was a dual grand dog called Nettle Creek Stick to It, and he was off of Charlie 7 and out of a Huckabuck female.
Ooh.
And so, yep. And so I bought her.
Those are Indiana
and that's
dogs.
Kind of where, yes. And so I bought her as a real young dog. She was 16 months old when I got her. She had barked at a cage coon. When she was 23 months old, she was a night champion. And she made her bones by getting by herself and having a coon. And, that's what JJ was the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just where I've just built it from. These dogs, I consider them to be people pleasers. If you're happy, by golly, they're happy. And they're pretty versatile. I've had them used on big game. I've had them used on wild hogs, and had them used on deer. They're fast enough they can keep up with some of these deer dogs.
Mm-hmm.
But they're real easy. I tell everybody I've been doing this a while, and I have mastered 172 different ways to mess a dog up. But I don't get to take a whole lot of credit for my dogs turning out, other than I'm the guy that buys the fuel and has the truck and takes them to a place to where they can learn how to do what they need to do. And I just basically show them what I don't like.
Yeah. So how many,
they do the rest.
How many generations are you into your breeding program there, Alan?
I've got the 4th one in the whelping box right now.
Okay. So 4 generations deep, and tell me, this is going to be a multi-pronged question, but the first question I'm going to ask is, tell me what you look for in a hound that makes you think that this is a breeding quality type dog. This is what I want to carry on. Just tell me some characteristics that you see there that makes you want to breed it, and then we'll talk about what you see that says that's a nice dog, but it's not getting bred.
Yeah. So if you talk to 10 coon hunters, you'll get 12 different answers on this. But they just kind of come to me. When it comes to picking a puppy, I'll tell you the secret to picking a puppy is you decide what sex you want to keep, and you take whatever's left. That's kind of how I do it. If I decide I want a male puppy, I put them up for sale. People come buy them, and usually I'll take whatever's left in the box. I'm not, sometimes I'll fall in love with one just because it's pretty can't tell a whole lot about a 6-week-old puppy other than I can tell you right off the bat if it wants to crawl away from me and get in the corner of the box, that dog is probably not going to make it in terms of being able to learn from you because he's afraid of you.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned a few tricks over the years to kind of get them to bond with you, but in the back of that dog's mind, he's always going to be skittish, and that dog, in my opinion, should never be used for breeding stock.
Mm-hmm.
And if you breed dogs, everybody that breeds dogs makes some of those, whether people admit it or not. These dogs do not walk on water. But I've been very, very blessed with being able to take a line of dogs and try, I'm going to use the wrong words here, but try to keep it within a family line. I guess that's the way I want to say it. I was going to say keep it pure, but that's not correct. But keep it within a family line. And I think that me and a couple of my friends who breed dogs the same way have managed to do that. And it's not that I'm against any other bloodlines. This is the bloodline that just suits me.
Mm-hmm.
And these dogs may not be for the next guy or the guy for that, but if you go hunting with me and you like what I have, I'm more than willing to share.
Yeah.
I just.
Well, I think there's a lot of people out there like that. I'm like that. I know what I like, and if you like it too, then I might be able to hook you up down the road with some of that. If you don't like it, then there are plenty other places and plenty of other other stud dogs and breeding programs out there that might produce what you like. But I try not. I don't flip flop when I'm raising puppies or whatever to what is fitting a scorecard or whatever. And that's why I'm not, breeding 6,000 females with a stud dog too. But, you know what I mean? If you like it, I feel like I've got a pretty doggone good handle on what a coon dog is and what they're supposed to be. And, I know what I like, and if you like it too, then we can be friends and you can hunt some of my stuff. If you don't, then no hard feelings. Just go find what you like.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So I guess what I like most about these dogs is they've got it between the ears. They're smart.
I love a smart dog.
I can take a puppy, and in 15 minutes, I can have him sitting, I can have him staying, and within 2 or 3 days, I can have him out in the yard working him probably without a leash.
Mm-hmm.
And the dogs that handle for me get a lot more woods time than the dog that's just trying to drag me all around the yard.
I am the same way.
So I just refuse to work with a dog that is an idiot. And I produce some of those. But I generally try to raise a couple of litters a year. I don't want to raise too many because raising puppies, if you do it right, it's a lot of work and it's expensive. And so I don't do this for a living. I do it because I enjoy it. I love it. It's I don't know. I think it was put in my DNA generations ago. Sure. But it's one of those things. If it's I'll probably catch some flack for this. I don't like to hunt in the rain. I'm 45. I've done it.
Yeah, me too.
I don't like to hunt when it's 10 degrees outside. I'm from Georgia. If I wanted to live in the snow, if I'd go hunting in the snow, I'd want to move to Michigan or Indiana or something. And so, I don't mind it when it's cold. It's just, and I don't on the flip side, I'll go hunting when it's 85 degrees at 10 o'clock, and a lot of folks won't.
Yeah. See,
But,
I won't hunt when it's that hot out. I can't stand to hunt. I've come to the point where summertime hunting just doesn't do it for me anymore. I used to get out there. I used to get after it. And because I was hunting something, I felt obligated that I needed to get out there and stuff. But I've stood under those trees when it was raining so hard and you're trying to shine a tree and you can't shine a tree because you're looking into raindrops and or rain showers. And so I'm right there with you. But I will tell you that some of the coldest nights I've ever spent in my life have been in Georgia. Much colder than when I was in Indiana. And it's just, Georgia's a strange place, especially South Georgia. If it's 30 degrees and the humidity is 70, 80%, it is cold.
Oh, yeah. It's real cold. With my, we'll call it my day job or my career. I've been all over the country, and I've been in some cold weather. And let me tell you, 20 degrees in Kansas with the wind blowing 20 miles an hour is still better than 34 degrees and a light rain in Georgia.
I have same way with Southeast Indiana. We're really not that far apart. I mean, I could be at your house probably in 6.5 hours driving south on 75. But at the same time, we get those days too. And I've told all my friends out, all the people I know out in the Rocky Mountains, we pulled out of the Swan Valley 1 year lion hunting, and it was 20 below zero. And that's cold for somebody that grew up in Montana. But I was looking at them and I was like, guys, I've been colder at 35 degrees in Indiana when it's raining and nasty.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Right.
I hear you.
But I just, these dogs have just, I'll just say it like this. They suit me. And they suit my personality. When they're, finished, they hustle. They're smart enough to know that they'll work cold tracks, but they're smart enough to know when that coon, they're not going to get it treed and they'll move on. They don't stand on their head a lot. They've got some winding ability. That's probably what I love most about them is they can stand on the edge of a field and pick their head up and tree one 300 yards away that's never been on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that has won me a lot of hunts. They're independent, but not independent to a fault.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean independent to a fault?
Well, that just goes to the deep and lonely mindset where my dog's going to be by itself, whether it's at 100 yards or 100 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And where I am, the coon are definitely not as thick as they would be in Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, those kind of places. So when I say they got to hustle, when you cut them, they've got to go hunting, and they've got to go find a track. And there's some places around here where they'll have to go a mile to get struck. I prefer not to hunt those places. But
me either.
But they're here. And so the dog that you cut in there that is independent, what I would classify as independent to a fault, is the dog that's going to go and get struck and get in there and get treed, and another dog honor him, and he don't want to be there with that other dog even though he did all the work, or another dog get treed and they're working the same track and it could be bang bang. That dog gets that tree scored, and the independent to a fault dog, well, he's through there another mile before he picks up another track. And then if you're in a competition hunt, you just busted out the back end and you're beat no matter how good your hound is.
Yeah. So kind of describe, are you hunting PKC, UKC, how has the time change affected your success rate or the style of dog that you're hunting?
Well, I've hunted PKC. I mainly hunt UKC just because the PKC clubs, there's a lot of them in Georgia, just not a lot of them around me, and I'm not going to drive an hour and a half on a Tuesday night,
right,
to go to a competition hunt.
You got Angus to breed and take care of and farm and a full-time job.
That's right.
Yep.
And and everything's fine as long as I'm sitting in my recliner. But as soon as I get in the truck and get out of pocket, it all goes to hell in a handbasket. But no, I enjoy competition hunting, but I love to coon hunt, and so I can take the competition or leave it. But I do enjoy it. What I can tell you, and this is probably leading into something else, but when I was in high school in the 90s, I could pull to the end of my driveway, and within 5 miles in any direction you pointed from that driveway, I could start hunting. And within that distance, there would be somewhere for me to hunt, and I could go hunting, and I could turn loose 3 or 4 times a night for a solid month, and never ever turn loose in the same place twice, and never be more than 5 miles from my house.
Yeah,
you can't do that today.
Yeah.
And so we've got 7 million people that live 80 miles from us, from where I live in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't begin to guess how many live in Athens, Georgia. It's not nearly as big as Atlanta is, but the University of Georgia's there, and we get a lot of urban sprawl from Athens, and so it's more and more difficult to find somewhere to go. A piece of property that the timber company owned in the 90s, somebody has gone in there and bought 2 acres of land and think they own the whole place. Or it's been leased out to big game hunters that do not want dogs there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's more and more difficult to find places to go. And that's another reason that I think that independent to a fault, deep and lonely style dog, which I love a deep and lonely dog. Don't think I'm putting them down. That used to be my style.
Mm-hmm.
But today, they either get out of pocket and you're beat in a hunt, or you better have a really good relationship with your sheriff or the game warden. Because they're going to get on somebody else's property and they're not going to like it.
Right. I hear you, man.
And growing up in my area, I knew, I don't know all of them anymore, but I knew all of my neighbors, and none of them cared that I was on their place. If they saw lights, they either knew it was me, or I could pull up in the yard and, oh yeah, Alan, that's fine. Go get your dogs. I hope they got them. If it's season, make sure you get him, because I've been having them come up and getting the cow feeder,
right,
or catching my chickens or something.
Sure.
And it's not that way anymore. So we've got to, as houndsmen, we're fighting it on all fronts. I think that the big game hunters leasing up large tracts of land have hurt us in terms of, they don't want you in there because you're going to run all the game off, even though we have science on our side and a pretty elaborate study that was done in the mid-90s that says they don't. And I can get you a link to put that on the Houndsman XP Facebook page where people can read that study.
We've posted that several times. I'll post it again, though, because I think houndsmen need that in their toolbox to be able to talk about it. But let me tell you a story about that So what we're talking about is the study that was done in South Carolina, and it was the way this study went was the university and a timber company set aside properties, and they wanted
also the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources was involved.
South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. They all came to an agreement that these college students were going to do this study on the effects of hound hunting on deer movement. And so they had a control area that they set aside, and they didn't hunt it. And you're going to have to help me here because I'm going off of memory. But I think it was 2 years that they didn't hunt it. The other piece of property, they hunted continuously. They deer hunted it. They did all the regular hunting, and they also allowed coon hunting in there. They didn't allow coon hunting on the control. And then after go ahead.
That's not exactly how it went. And the reason I can tell you this is because I read it like 2 days ago.
Okay. It's been a while since I read it.
And I refreshed my memory. What they did was it was about a 7,000 or 8,000 acre tract of land.
Okay.
And they divided it in half, roughly. And they tagged 25 or 30 deer.
Yes, I left that part out.
They radio caller 25 or 30 deer. I said tag.
Right. You're thinking cows.
Yes. It was 54% bucks and 46% does that were in that group of deer that they tagged, or I say tagged again, that they radio collared. And so they would hunt, one night a week, and they did it over 2 years. They simulated during deer season. They simulated deer hunting with a trail camera, where it would be a stand. And I'm thinking that they set up some bait stations because in South Carolina, or at least for this study, they were able to bait them. And so they set up trail cameras as that trail camera facilitated a deer hunter, and they would coon hunt one side of the property on a particular night of that week, and left the other side as a control.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following week they would hunt the other side and leave. Say they hunted the east side this week, the west side they left alone. The next week they hunted the west side, and the east side they left alone. And over that study, there was no statistical difference in deer movement. And there was no statistical difference in deer movement before the hunt or after the hunt. And it gave the cameras over those 2 year studies, it was somewhere in the 7,000 or 8,000 number of opportunities that a deer hunter would have had to harvest a deer. And so there was no statistical difference between the control and the test sites. And so, but you show that to a deer hunter and they're like, I don't care. I don't want you in here.
Yeah. So taking me back to my story before I butchered the whole study thing. So we were pushing for the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance. I was testifying in the Natural Resources Commission hearing about this, and these deer hunters wouldn't hear it. I mean, they were like, nah, that's South Carolina. That doesn't apply to here. And, it was amazing that so my response now, I'm jumping ahead, that's how that went. And we did get an expansion on the training season, running season, whatever you want to call it. We did accomplish that. But after all of that was over and through that whole thing, my response to them was, you show me your science that says that it does affect it. Because I've got science that says it doesn't. So don't tell me that speculate and tell me that it doesn't work. You show me your science that says it doesn't work. And that's the only way you could combat it.
That's right. But they're not going to, the crux of the situation is big game hunting brings in more total dollars for your state, for my state, for any state that has big game hunting than small game hunting does.
Right.
The problem that lies therein is small game hunting is the gateway for young people to get involved with the outdoors, to build a love for hunting. I mean, you will take a 7-year-old rabbit hunting, you'll take them squirrel hunting, you'll take them coon hunting. If they're tough little rascals, you might even take them bear hunting. But those are activities that a child with a shorter attention span than an adult would really enjoy. Now, if you took that same kid, all of a sudden, Dad, I want to go deer hunting with you, and put them in the deer stand, they're going to be up there 15 minutes. I got to pee. I'm bored. I'm going to move around. And nobody's going to have fun. But if you get those kids involved early and in activities where they can run around, they can play with their buddies, and then say, okay, the dogs are treated, let's go get them. And, they run in there and they're able to pet on old Sally or
right.
Big Bobby or whatever,
yep.
and see that raccoon or whatever game you're hunting in the tree, and they're hooked.
Yeah, it is
right off the bat, they're hooked.
I see these deer hunters that want to start their kids out with deer hunting, and they've got a ground blind. Maybe it's turkey hunting, whatever it is. Turkey hunting's rough for a small kid too, I can tell you that. I've raised 3. But they'll get them in a blind, and then they'll hand them an iPad or an iPhone and say, hey, go ahead and play your game while you're doing, mute it out and play that game. They want to keep them busy and wait for the deer to walk out, and really all they're teaching them to do is shoot. But I'm thinking, man, they're missing so much. When I take young kids coon hunting, and we did it for years here at our place, they have a blast. They're over in the creek. If they're bored, they're flipping over rocks and catching crawdads. They're looking at deer tracks. They're picking up deer droppings and throwing them at each other, and that all sparks an interest of that outdoors mentality. They don't have time to look at an iPhone or an iPad. They're into the hunt.
That's right. Well, every rock they kick over.
Oh yeah.
Every crawdad they catch, every track they see, they're learning.
Yes.
And so that's how we keep our youth involved, and it's a shame. And it makes me sad that children or young people that want to get involved in the outdoors, and want to hunt. Especially, I'll be honest, I haven't deer hunted in about 10 years,
mm-hmm.
and we've got big deer on my farm. We got a lot of deer on my farm. It'd be easy for me to stop what I'm doing in the daytime and go sit in a deer stand and go hunt a deer. And, don't get me wrong, I enjoy eating them, but, that just doesn't do it for me. I harvest very few raccoons,
mm-hmm.
Because coon hunting for me is not about killing anything. It's about watching my dogs work and enjoying what, the Lord's given me to enjoy. And also, I don't know, I don't want to make it sound arrogant, but seeing something that I had a hand in doing from conception on out to a finished product, that's what gets my heart pumping.
That is such a valid point. And I'm not here. We're trying to bridge gaps, bridge the gaps in the hunting community with this podcast. I hope deer hunters
mm-hmm.
listen to this, and they listen to the message about, man, let your kids go coon hunting. Find somebody in your area that has a hound, and take them bear hunting, take them coon hunting, understand what that is. Watch how your kids react to that. But the other thing that we want the message to be is, guys like you guys, there's thousands and thousands of houndsmen out there that started planting that pup's first tree 3 years ago or 4 years ago,
mm-hmm.
when they raised its mother. And then when they bred that they selectively picked the stud for their next litter. And as that puppy was born and the way they nourished it and they brought it up and now it's making its first tree, it may be 2 or 3 years in the making that they've got invested in that first time that that pup pulls up, locates, and trees its first raccoon or its first bear, its first lion. And that's such a huge investment that we make.
That's right. That's right. And, you know, I know I probably skipped around all over the place during this thing already, but you know.
No, you're doing great.
When you know, I don't know, I kind of feel like I've glanced over a bunch of it. But, you know, when you first approached me about doing this, you said something about, you know, talking about how we need to be able to, you just said it, bridge the gap with landowners, and you said it even at the beginning of the podcast. You know, my thoughts on how we continue into the 21st century with free casting hounds.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not the way. Well, I'll say this: the way forward is not the way that we used to do it, and it's probably not going to be the way you or I or anybody else that might listen to this podcast expect. I believe there is a way forward to do it, but it's going to take a lot of effort, and it's, you know, people may laugh when they say this, but it's not anymore. It's not what you know. Part of it's what you know for sure, but it's not all about what you know. It's going to be about who you know. And you need to know who your state representatives are. You know who your state senator is. You need to know who your congresspeople are. You need to know who your senator is in the U.S. Senate. And as houndsmen, it doesn't matter if we hunt squirrels, rabbits, hogs, deer, bear. I don't want to leave anything out that you can hunt with a dog. Ducks, doves, it doesn't matter. There are more of them that do not and don't know and don't like what we do. And as hunters, I don't even care if you're a steel hunter. They're coming for you too.
Man, I wish we could get people to understand that, Alan. I think a lot of times houndsmen are the low hanging fruit. We talk about this a lot on the podcast, but
we're our own worst enemy. And
in what way?
This is the way my grandpa did it, and this is the way my dad did it, and this is the way I'm going to do it. And social media is a blessing and a curse. And you can get your message out there, but so can the people that want to put you away and get rid of your right to hunt with a dog. And we've got to know who we're dealing with, and you've got to fundamentally understand that they don't like you, and they don't care about you, and they're going to do everything they can to get their way, and to heck with everything else. But, you know, I don't want to paint a dreary picture, but it has been proven time and time again, if hunters can come together, they can stop it.
Right.
We have science, and if you know, you need, Georgia is a prime example of, we need to get all our hunters together and form an alliance of some type. We don't have that. That would encompass people of a hunting persuasion, regardless of the game you pursue and the things that you enjoy doing.
So it's pretty tribalistic down there. You've got people that deer hunt, you got people that turkey hunt, and then you got bear hunters, and then you got coon hunters, but there's no, united front for hunters in Georgia. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, I mean, each group will have their own. I mean, we've got Bucks Unlimited, Quail Unlimited, Ducks Unlimited. We've got the Georgia Federation of Coon Hunters. I may get called out on this, but I'm not 100% sure that we have a Bear Hunter Association. And, you know, there's a lot of black bears in Georgia.
Yeah.
We've got them in North Georgia, and we got them in South Georgia.
I'm pretty sure there's a Georgia Bear Hunters Association. Pretty sure.
I'm you can't quote me on that. I've never heard of them.
Well, that's an issue. If you haven't, that's an issue.
Yes, that's right. And we need to be able to all come together and find common ground, and, you know, not have the mindset of, well, that's their problem. They're not messing with me. They're coming for you too. They just hadn't got to you yet.
Mm-hmm.
But having said all that, we are very fortunate in Georgia that our Department of Natural Resources is very, very pro-hunter. You know, we may not, as individuals and individual groups of hunters, we may not like everything that the state does, and that's okay. They've gone forward, and this is all my opinion. They've gone forward and tried to do what's best biologically for wildlife, and I fully believe that. If you don't like something, the first thing that someone high up in the Georgia Department of Natural Resources would tell you is you need to call your state representative. You need to talk to your senator. This is something that you'll have to do through the legislative process. And if you're like me, and I'm speaking to the folks that might be listening, if you're like me, you're busy.
Right.
And you've got 1,000 things on your plate. You're trying to make a living. You're trying to raise your kids. You got to get your kids to write their term papers. All this stuff. But that's what lobbyists are for. And that's why it's important to have a group get together and fund lobbyists to have your voice heard. These guys that are elected, when they get elected, regardless of party, their main job once they get elected is to get reelected.
You got that right.
If they think they can gather up the voters, they'll put forth legislation in their from their district to make the voters in their district happy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you've got to stay on. They work for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, I'll take the line out of Forrest Gump, and that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah. Well, I think there's several things that we need to do going forward. And my representative told me, he gave me a really good piece of advice. He goes, Chris, it's not nearly as important that you know who I am. It's more important that I know who you are. And that only happens if you are willing to step out and make that contact and talk to those people and let them know that you're watching. And I think there's a lot of things, everything in our society and our culture these days gets spun and convoluted and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, wildlife professionals and wildlife managers want to do what's best for the resource. So it's our job as hunters and houndsmen to continually show and show that we are working for that end. And that's what's going to make it survive into the future. Right. You know, there's a lot of emotional charged stuff that comes out. We watched it happen in Nevada last year with bear hunting, and it was defeated. We watched it in Montana trying to restrict bear hunting. It was defeated. You know, and I think it's going to happen again this year in Vermont. And bear hunting's a hot topic right now. Nobody's fighting against coon hunters because we've got the agriculture on our side, the ag community on our side for that. You know, Indiana, that's right. Nobody talks about outlawing coon hunting because suburbanites living outside of Indianapolis have problems with raccoons. Farmers have problems with raccoons. Homeowners, landowners, and they like that out there. Now we do have the biggest issue in Indiana with coon hunting is people that are deer hunters. That's where the first conflict is. The second conflict is with landowners that don't understand what we're doing out there in the middle of the night. And that can be solved by getting in your truck on a Sunday afternoon while it's still daylight and driving around in your community and talking to people and introducing who you are and telling them what's going on and what you can offer them as a hunter. The raccoon's not going to be eating their cat food off your porch anymore if you allow me to hunt here. Or I'm hunting on the farmer's place next door. I might end up on your 5 acres because the coon's coming over here to eat your cat food or get your bird seed or whatever. And if you just have that communication and they can put a face to it prior to, man, you can solve a lot of issues. And
yes.
but it takes
an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yep.
in that instance. But absolutely, I agree.
But it just takes we have to be, nobody's going to flag you down when they see your truck rolling by with the dog box and saying, "Hey, are you a houndsman? I need you to hunt here." Nobody's going to do that. You need to approach them.
That's right. And another thing that when you were talking about that, the suburban folks that have the raccoons, that they knock over their trash cans, they eat Fluffy's cat food, all that stuff. A raccoon has no value to most people.
Right.
And it's up to houndsmen that pursue them to give them value. And, we've got a story to tell. And it's a great story. It's a story of family. It's a story of discipline. It's a story of being a steward of the land.
Yes.
And especially being stewards of other people's property. And, we've got a good story to tell. And we, as houndsmen and women, need to get out there and tell it. And, I try to, but, I'm a little bit guarded about what I say to whom and where I say it, because, my wife's always over my shoulder saying, "You really shouldn't put that on Facebook." And I'm like, well, they need to hear it. They need to hear it from somebody else. You don't need to say that. I'm a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I go back and tell her, somebody's got to say it.
Right.
And so again, that's social media being a platform for us to get our story out. But we've got to be responsible in the way we use it.
Man, we can do a whole podcast on that because you moderate a Facebook page. We don't have time to get into it tonight or during this episode, but yeah, we could absolutely go through and talk about social media, houndsmen and social media, and we've touched on it several times. But Alan, there is so much we could talk to you about. I hope you'll come back and I appreciate you taking time to do this. I'd like to come down and hunt with you sometime. I'll stay in touch with you, but man, I appreciate your time. I really do.
Yeah, it was my pleasure, and I'd be happy to be on this thing as much as you'll have me.
I guarantee you.
I said at the beginning, I got a big mouth. I got a lot to say.
I knew that's why, and I do too, and that's what makes it. Somebody's got to say it. And you got to have people that are willing to jump out there and say it. So I feel like we had a good discussion. We got to know.
Yes, sir.
We got an introduction to Mr. Alan Bridges from Georgia, and there's a lot more layers to this onion. We can talk next time. We'll talk about the North Georgia Houndsmen Association and your involvement there and all the good things you guys are doing.
Oh yeah, it's a labor of love and yeah, but you're right. There's a whole lot we can talk about that.
Yeah. Well, Alan, I appreciate your time, and we're going to wrap this one up. Until next time, buddy, you follow your hounds and I'll follow mine.
Yes, sir.